In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use your value pencils to create value scales and gradients. In our last video, we talked about the different types of pencils we have. We have an HB, and we have different levels of H's and B's. So, to create a value scale, that is a bar of value that gets progressively darker in each square. Right? So you don't need to use a ruler for this. It's just what I've got. Use any straight edge you can find to create a bar across your page. And I'm going to divide that bar into 10 sections. 10 sections. All right. So, 1. Again, you don't need to use a ruler. I just like things to be neat, so I'm marking off every inch. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. So these in here are going to be my 10 squares. Right. At my lightest, I should be using my 5H since it's my lightest pencil. At my darkest, I should be using my 6B because it's my darkest pencil. So I'm going to kick things off with my 5H. All right. And with my 5H, I'm going to shade with as little pressure as I can. All right. I want my page to be barely lighter than the white of the paper. I'm using small circular strokes. This is not something that can be done quickly. Take your time. All right, you can see I'm starting to build in some value now. Slowly, slowly, small circular strokes. Right? Ideally, your stroke should be so small that you cannot tell the texture. It should look completely smooth. That is really hard to achieve, but I want you to try your absolute best. Almost done here. How long I'm taking is how long you should be taking. As I said before, this is not fast. And there we go. I've shaded it a really light gray, barely lighter than, or barely darker than the white of my paper. In my next square, I'm going to grab my 4H. I'm going to again start with my small circular strokes. Keep it light. All right, very little pressure on my pencil. But because my 4H is softer than my 5H, it will leave a bit more graphite behind and will therefore be darker. Again, this is my 4H. Notice how I shade with the side of my pencil. That will give you a nice even mark. All right, so use the side of your pencil. Don't use the tip. Again, my pressure is nice and soft. I'm going back in and I'm blending some areas that are a little uneven. And that is my next lightest value. Okay, so you can see I've got my lightest and my next lightest. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to skip my 3H and I'm going to go directly to my 2H because I want to start being able to build a little bit more value now. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to start shading. Again, those small circular strokes. But be careful not to get too dark. We're still being fairly light here. A lot of people, when they do this, they get too dark too fast. Right? So keep it gentle. Again, this is my 2H. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple squares off camera, and I'll be right back with my updated value scale. At this point, I've shaded through my HB pencil. All right, so we can see I've come a long way from my lightest value to my mid value, but I'm not done yet. I'm now going to take my B pencil and I'm going to start shading my B square. At this point, you're probably wanting to start putting a little bit more pressure on your pencil to get those darker values. All right? Or you could keep your pressure the same and go over an area more than once. Again, be careful not to get too dark too fast. We can always make things darker, but it's harder to make things lighter. Another tip for all you lefties out there like me, be careful not to smudge the area that you've already shaded. Keep your hand out of it. this point, I'm going to go over, do a second pass to get things a little bit darker. And there's my B value, just a little bit darker. Then I'm going to go to my 2B pencil. And I'm going to shade in this 2B square. Now you should be noticing a real difference in the softness of your graphite now from where you started. I think that B pencils and the softer pencil you get becomes smoother to shade with. So you'll probably feel that as you're working. I'm going to go ahead and shade a little more off camera, and I'll be right back with more steps. So now I've shaded my 2B, I skipped the 3B, and I went straight to 4B. So we're starting to get pretty dark, but we can still go darker. Now I'm going to go to my 5B, and I'm going to start shading. I'm putting a good amount of pressure on my pencil now because I want it to be dark right away. I'm turning my paper so I don't smudge my values, but you can still watch my process. You'll notice that shading goes a little bit faster with your B values because the graphite is softer. We don't have to worry so much about uneven marks. It blends a lot more easily. Then I'm making sure everything's even and smooth. Alright, and for my last square, I'm going to grab my 6B. Again, I'm turning my paper so I don't smudge my values. Now, I'm really pressing hard. I'm going to go over my area more than once. Go over it again, make sure everything is super dark. And I'm done. So we'll hold it up so you can see it better. All right, we've got the darkest, it gets lighter. Your last step, I want you to label these values 1 through 10 because we will be referencing these when we talk about values the rest of the year. So that is a value scale.